Good afternoon. It was a stormy day 13 of Donald Trump's criminal trial. We are in week 4. Stormy Daniels testified on direct nation up about an hour or so ago. Now, there's still some cross-examination taking place. Susan Nicholas, Donald Trump's defense lawyer, is questioning Stormy Daniels. I want to get your take on the cross-examination, Karen, and how you think Stormy Daniels is holding up. Every day we keep these handy-dandy scorecards to keep you all updated on all of the main events from each day. We're now on Trump trial day 13. So here's what went down today. So the way we kind of learned that Stormy Daniels was going to testify is Donald Trump made some post about how all these witnesses are so unfair and how he's being sandbagged by these witnesses. He quickly deleted the post. That was one of the big indications that it could be a big witness today. And then we learned it was going to be Stormy Daniels. Donald Trump's lawyers objected to the testimony of Stormy Daniels before she testified about any areas regarding her having sex with Donald Trump. The prosecutor said, look, we're not going to get into a lot of the salacious details, but we need to explain what went down because Trump's been out there denying it. And we need, for a matter of just credibility for the witness, for Stormy Daniels, she needs to explain what went down at this 2006 golf tournament, how she met Donald Trump, how Donald Trump's security guard, Schiller, went over to her and said, Mr. Trump wants to have dinner with you in his hotel room tonight. What went down there? And so we'll get to more of that in just a moment. The judge basically said, look, I'll sustain some of the objections. I don't want a lot of the salacious sexual details getting out there. And for example, one of the things that the prosecution said that they would not get into is any kind of description of Donald Trump's genitals or anything like that. Stormy Daniels had previously stated on Jimmy Kimmel and elsewhere that it was very kind of small and like a tiny mushroom. And so none of that could come in as testimony. Then you had Sally Franklin was actually the first witness to testify. She was or is a vice president at Penguin Random House. Some of the evidence that came in is some of the statements that Donald Trump had made in all of his books, where he talks about how he goes through all of his invoices, how he told the same story about Jeff McConney, his controller, who he threatened to fire because on one occasion, McConney paid a bill without negotiating it down. And so Trump would not stipulate to the authenticity of his own words in the book. And it was kind of this like Kristi Noem moment, right? The MAGA Republican governor of South Dakota, where on cross-examination, Donald Trump's lawyers tried to distance Donald Trump from his own books and asked Sally Franklin. So ghostwriters just kind of write whatever they want, right? And then Sally Franklin's like, not really. I mean, they usually consult with the author and write what the author wants them to ultimately write. So that was the first witness, very short. Then you had Stormy Daniels testifying. She went through very specific details. First about, her background. And she actually has a very impressive background. And then she about how she the adult film business, and then ultimately how that led her to meet Donald Trump in 2006 at this golf tournament. Donald Trump's security guard or bodyguard went over to her and said, Mr. Trump would like to have dinner with you. She said, F no, to which people who were in the courtroom said the jury kind of chuckled and smiled when she said, F no, I don't want to have dinner with him. She then talked about how her publicist encouraged her, look, have dinner with the guy. At least you'll get a funny story out of it. Go have dinner with him. So she decided to have dinner with him. She shows up at his hotel room where this celebrity golf tournament was. And she described the hotel room in very vivid detail. She said it was bigger than any apartment that she lived in. And when she walked in, Donald Trump was like wearing a robe, like a Hefner-esque robe. And she's like, hey, can you please get dressed? Like, I don't really feel like comfortable. Can you please put on your clothes? So Donald Trump put on his clothes. And then he started making a bunch of like strange comments to her about your blonde hair looks like Ivanka. You remind me a lot. You're both misunderstood women, and you remind me of her. They went through more of the conversations that they had. Ultimately, Stormy Daniels had to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom, and when she came back, she says that Donald Trump was basically naked, like he was wearing boxer shorts and like just a shirt, and she was kind of surprised by that. And she talked about a power dynamic that was at play there, how Trump was talking about getting her on The Apprentice. And then she talked about ultimately that they had sex. And she said that there was not a condom used. And what was weird, and I was thinking about this in real time as I was getting a lot of reports, there wasn't a lot of objections from Donald Trump's lawyers. They were objecting at times, but not objecting to a lot of it. Then there was a break for morning recess. Donald Trump went into like a complete rage and he started posting, we're going for a mistrial. Wow, wow, wow. This is so unfair, so unfair. So then Donald Trump's lawyers get back. They file a mistrial motion or request for mistrial. It's denied by Justice Merchan. And Justice Merchan was like, I have to tell you, Mr. Blanche, I was surprised that the defense didn't object. It's not my job as the judge to make objections for you. You allowed a lot of this testimony to come in. And had you made objections, I probably would have sustained it. But you need to take personal responsibility as lawyers in this case. It's not on me. That's on you. I thought that was an interesting moment. And then I got to tell you, Karen, I want to get your take on cross-exam. Like, I thought that Stormy Daniels did okay, good on direct. I think it was a lot of salacious stuff. And I think the witnesses who testified more about the documents, I think were more powerful. But I got to say, I've been following the cross-exam, and my own view of it, at least for now, is that she's been, that she's been holding up pretty decently on cross-exam, at least as of now and as of this recording. It's been a fairly aggressive cross-exam by Susan Eckles. But anyway, that's kind of the recap. But everyone's here to get your take, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, about everything that happened. So tell us what you observed. What did you think about today?
Can I ask you a clarifying question, though, first? So I was confused by that she owes Donald Trump $500,000. Like, what the heck?
So she owes him money in connection with a defamation lawsuit that was filed on her behalf by Avenatti, I think in the Central District of California. And it was a defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump. California has very strong anti-slap types of laws that actually protect the First Amendment right to make lots of statements. And so Trump was making certain statements about her. And then she sued Donald Trump.
You might want to explain what SLAP is to people.
It's a strategic lawsuit against public policy. And so it is a way that if somebody's filing a lawsuit to try to chill First Amendment speech or stop someone, in theory, it was to protect journalists and to kind of protect individuals who were out there speaking in the press. But it's been frequently weaponized a lot by people who say bad things in public. So she sued Donald Trump for defamation. Donald Trump argued, I believe in this case a few years back, that he has a First Amendment right to make those statements, filed a motion to dismiss. Like if he makes statements about her, for example, and it's not these statements, Karen, but like if Donald Trump calls her a horse face and says no affair and kind of makes statements like that, and then she sues him for defamation, someone like Trump who sued, doesn't have to be Trump. You can argue, look, I was invoking my First Amendment right. I was giving an opinion. I was being hyperbolic. I wasn't meant to be taken seriously here. This is an issue of major public concern that I was just talking about. It doesn't constitute defamation. So I think that's what that case was. And then the judgment was actually attorney's fees, because when you lose on the what's called an anti-SLAPP statute, when you get a motion to dismiss and you lose on a defamation case, you owe attorney's fees. So then Trump made a petition for several $100,000 in attorney's fees, and that's what ultimately was awarded. And I think what she was saying, Karen, and what her view of it was that at that time she was being represented by a lawyer, now a disbarred lawyer who's in jail, Avenatti, who was the one who filed that lawsuit as part of a very kind of overly aggressive campaign that he was doing at that time. So that's what that was about.
It just seems so unfair, that he calls her these names, he denies this, and then now she owes him attorney's fees and he's a billionaire. And you've got Avenatti who's in prison. I don't know. It just seems like she seems like the victim there. And it kind of seems, it's just odd to me that and the reason I asked this question is because it's something that came up it's come up in the cross-examination. I guess they think it helps them somehow, and maybe they'll tie it up when she's back on the stand on Thursday. Cross-examination just started. There's no court tomorrow because it's Wednesday and the court is off on Wednesdays. And so they'll resume on Thursday. But to me, it didn't seem, look, I wasn't in the courtroom today, so I'm not 100% sure, but it definitely seemed, I don't know. I wouldn't think that they would think that would help them, but maybe they'll come up with something. But so so today there, as you said, there were two witnesses. The one, the woman who testified about Donald Trump's book excerpts that he wrote. That was just brilliant. It's going to be so great on summation because it's his words that they're going to use against him. And they just read excerpts about how he's a micromanager, about how he looks at, he looks at every single check, and that's how you get rich and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be, anytime you can use a defendant's own words against them, it is so powerful. And these are essentially admissions and, like I said, his own words. So I think that's great evidence. I'm so glad they put that in. And it was also very interesting that Donald Trump was complaining about this surprise witness. Look, there aren't that many witnesses left. They have the witness list. And of course, Susan Necheles she hasn't done a witness yet. So she's been preparing for this witness for God knows how long. We've known for sure that she was going to be called. I think this also pretty clearly establishes that they're not going to call Karen McDougal or Dino Sajudin, the doorman, which is what we've been hypothesizing all along. If they were going to call them, they would have done it in chronological order, the way they've been doing everything else. And those came first. So I'm fairly confident now. Like I said, we've been hypothesizing that this will be the case, but I'm fairly confident now that that's where we are. So aside from a few more witnesses that are going to be talking about the records and the documents and maybe, other things like the book with his own words, maybe putting in some movies or, other recordings of his own words. I think we could probably see whenever you have a public figure who's been out there saying things for so long, there's a lot to work with if you're the prosecutor. So we might see a few more of those. But of course, the big witness is Michael Cohen, whenever that is. But it's definitely coming soon, my guess. So if Stormy is going to be Thursday, so they ended today, no court tomorrow. Susan Necheles still has a lot more cross. And Susan Hoffinger, the prosecutor, said has redirect. There will be recross. So Stormy will be on part of Thursday, if not most of Thursday. There's no way they would start Michael Cohen on a Friday, is my guess, because, again, they're going to want to start on a Monday with him. You're not going to want to give the weekend in between. So mostly because you just don't want to break up his testimony. You don't want the jury to kind of forget whatever he started saying on Friday after having a couple of days off, or hearing, seeing what the news over the weekend is going to report about it or what their friends will say about it. They're not supposed to do any of that, but in case any of that leaks in or seeps in, the prosecution's not going to want that. So I would expect, if I had to guess, my best guess is Michael Cohen will testify next week, possibly Monday. But getting back to how did Stormy Daniels do? She was very interesting. There was a lot of arguing over whether or not the details of the sexual encounter could come in. They said it's, prejudicial and salacious. And if I were the prosecutor, I would have fought harder to get those details in for the following reasons. They did fight and they did argue that they should come in, and the defense attorney said they shouldn't, and the judge said, okay, I'm only going to allow it in a little bit. I agree. I think we're not going to let too much in. Well, I would have fought back really hard. This is one of those places that I would have really fought back hard, and I'll tell you why. He's calling Stormy Daniels a liar. So her credibility is obviously an issue. They're saying this never happened, and you're lying about this. You're lying about other details on the stand. You're lying, saying that somebody came after you in Las Vegas, and threatened you. That was part of her testimonies. They're saying that never happened. They're basically saying that she's a lying opportunist, extortionist who is just saw an opportunity to get money from Donald Trump and is taking it. And they've accused her of being a liar multiple times, not just on a cross, but publicly, in the opening, everywhere. And so when that puts her credibility in issue, then the prosecution has a right to prove that she's telling the truth and that her credibility is true. And the fact that they had sex is what this is about. If they had never had sex, none of this would have happened. None of this would have occurred, period. Okay. So the more details you can ask, I would have asked, if I was the prosecutor in prep, I would have said, tell me about, and I've done this as a sex crimes prosecutor, especially in child abuse cases. In child abuse cases, the defense always has to be, it never happened, because there's no such thing as consensual sex with a child. And so I would always, unfortunately, ask the children, describe certain areas that you would never have seen if it didn't happen. Is there a birthmark? Is there a particular, something that's, that you could say that you would only know. And then of course, if that thing exists, whatever that is, the birthmark, the shape of something, whatever, I don't want to get graphic, but, that kind of proves the point. And so I would have asked a lot of details about it, actually. And juries can also tell when something seems fake or something has the ring of truth, right? Of course, could she lie? Yes. But it just struck me the way she testified that, I took a special elevator up to the penthouse. His bodyguard was waiting outside. I went inside. The room was bigger than my first 3 apartments. Or the apartment, the hotel room was like a suite with many rooms, and it had like big, heavy furniture. It was really expensive. And, all this kind of stuff. To me, that is all very, that has the ring of truth. That feels like she was there. She was able to describe it for us. Same way when she said things like, when I talked to his bodyguard, Keith Schilling, that's how I would talk to Trump, is Trump would either call me from his phone or from Rona Graff's phone. And so here I have their contacts in my phone. It says Keith Trump or Rona Trump. And she took pictures of her contacts with text messages and calls from them and put that into evidence. And it's those types of small details. Does it really matter what Keith Schilling's phone number is? No, but the fact that she has it in her phone, again, corroborates that this occurred, right? That it has the ring of truth. And this is all about credibility. This is all about, who do you believe here on the stand? And so I would have fought like hell to get those details in. But anyway, they said, oh, it's a white collar case. It's too salacious, this and that. Suddenly everyone's, God forbid you can't talk about these things. And so she still talked about it, but it was very glossed over. And then they went into a lot of detail. The thing that surprised me, and I didn't realize how many times they had seen each other. They only had sex one time, but they saw each other multiple times over the course of more than a year in different locations, in LA, in Las Vegas, in New York, in his office. and she went into detail about each and every one of them and about other people who were present, whether it was Keith Schilling or Rona Graff, or we were in public with lots of people, or I brought a friend. There were so many people, witnesses, that this was not hidden. This was an open and kind of notorious relationship. Anyway, so it was surprising to me at how much detail, at how many times they had met up. I don't know how he denies this. And honestly, the fact that there's this tape out there that you and I talked about, I can't remember now if it was this morning or last night, Ben, when we talked about it, there's this tape with Trump on Air Force One saying he doesn't know who this is, and ask Michael Cohen. I mean, I think the prosecution is going to be able to show that he's lying, that he has lied, whether it's in court or out of court. He has spoken. They have tapes, they have records, and it's a lie. And so they have a right to prove that she's not lying and that he is lying, because if she's not lying and Michael Cohen's not lying, guess what? That equals proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So the jury is going to have a huge credibility determination to make. And look, she also talked about Trump's wife, that Trump said that Melania is very beautiful, but we don't sleep in the same room. Apparently Trump shook his head at that point. She talked about, the whole thing about, he asked her about condoms and does she wear condoms as a porn star? Of course, everyone knows he's a germaphobe. Then like at one point before they have sex, he's like, he reminds me of Ivanka. I realized the context that it was in, it seemed like it made sense. But when you know that he then had sex with her afterwards, it's so disgusting. I don't know. But so there were some of those kinds of details that I didn't like. She looked through his bag, in the bathroom. When she went to the bathroom, he used Pert Plus and Old Spice and a gold manicure kit. It's just all these little details. And those are the types of things that, to me, have the ring of truth. And those are the types of things that, like, those details are those are the kinds of things you don't make up. Right? Those are the kinds of things that makes you feel like, wow, she really was there. She knows the kind of products that he used. Anyway, he was shaking his head during all of this. But he was apparently paying close, rapt attention. Anyway, after lunch, there were many people who thought that, there's one other thing, sorry, that I thought was really powerful. And again, had the ring of truth. I don't think that this is the kind of thing that you could make up or would make up, right? It's kind of easily provable one way or another that she met Trump in Tahoe, and his bodyguard, Keith, said, called her and said, do you want to meet again? She said yes in public. And so they meet up because she doesn't want to have sex with him again, but she still wants to potentially be on The Apprentice, which seems to be a theme that women he's attracted to, clearly want that. And he was with a football player, Ben Roethlisberger, and, he called her his little friend and called him Big Ben, and she tried on his Super Bowl ring. Again, those are the types of details that feel like they're true. And let's see how they do on cross. Let's see how that all plays out. But so there was a lot of that level of detail. Anyway, so then there was the lunch break, and they came back for lunch and moved for a mistrial. So I guess they realized how devastating she was and how good she was. And so suddenly it's too prejudicial, move for a mistrial. Everything's different. We didn't know this was the story. It's different. And it's like, P.S., that's what cross-examination's for, by the way. If her story is different than what she said in her book or in her documentary or whatever, then that's what cross-examination's for. That's not grounds for a mistrial. But I didn't think they realized she would do that well. So that's why they wanted a mistrial. That's how you know it went well. If they're trying to seek a mistrial, that's when the trial went well. And the judge was like, hey, by the way, I was surprised, defense, that you guys didn't object more. If you had, I might have sustained some of those objections, but you didn't. So it's not grounds for a mistrial, but it was sort of interesting that, the judge was kind of like, well, if you're going to let them go there, then who am I to say, no, it's not it's not inadmissible. It's just a little bit irrelevant. At least they think so. Anyway, so then, I thought she did pretty well on direct from what I read, but it's all about cross and how she does on cross. And they just got started, and I'm sure they'll do a lot of preparation tomorrow. And then we'll see how she does on Thursday and go from there. She sounds like, she spoke really fast. They kept having to ask her to stop talking so fast. And I'm sorry, but I'm reading the comments, the live comments, and people are just so funny. The Old Spice and farts, that it's a toxic combination. Anyway, sorry. I have to stop looking at the comments and the live chats, but people are very funny. Anyway, but I'm turning that off. I can't read. I have to just pay attention to what I'm trying to say. Anyway, but it's they're going to have a lot of time to really kind of, I think, focus and go in and go after her. But they have to be careful because there is a power dynamic, right? He's a billionaire former president who's called her sleazebag and horseface. And of course they put a woman, as to cross her to make her to not look too heavy-handed. It's like a trick us lawyers do. You got a woman on the stand, you have a woman doing the cross and a woman doing the direct because you don't want to look too heavy-handed or whatever. And so that's what they did. And so, they're going to, I'm sure, and Susan Nicholas is a great lawyer. So I think she's going to, on Thursday, really be focused and kind of, go after her hard. I think they heard what the judge said, that you didn't object enough. And so they're going to take advantage and they're going to, not in a bad way, they're going to take advantage of that opportunity and do their job and cross her and let's see how she holds up. But I thought she did really, really well. I thought it had all the hallmarks of truth. It had all the hallmarks, the details of the truth. Again, if you're not telling the truth, you don't know those little details. You just say, yes, we did, whatever. Like you kind of gloss over. But anyway, I've spoken too long.
You have not spoken too long, Karen. So we go from Karen Friedman Agnifilo, the former number 2 at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office with nearly 30 years experience at that office, also serving as the acting district attorney at some points in times, giving you her analysis. And now we start our live with Michael Cohen. Again, we're going to stay away from topics that we have to stay away from when we're talking to Michael Cohen. But in terms of having connections to these proceedings and giving you the most up-to-date analysis, I think we're so grateful for our correspondents here at the Midas Touch Network, and it's an honor and a privilege to host Legal AF with Karen Friedman Agnifilo as well as Michael Popak. And KFA, thank you so much for leading our coverage here on the Midas Touch Network of Donald Trump's criminal trial. The Midas Touch Network is the #1 destination in the world, the most watched destination in the world on YouTube and across digital media for the coverage of the Trump criminal trial. Make sure you all hit subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. You may think you're subscribed, but you may not actually be. So hit subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to Legal AF on audio podcasts. Keep checking back on our YouTube feed. Every 60 to 90 minutes, we have new breaking news that we post on our YouTube feed. And make sure to share the word about the Midas Touch Network. Now, you don't have to do anything. You'll be automatically moved into the next live stream with Michael Cohen and myself for Political Beatdown. If for whatever reason YouTube doesn't transfer you to the live with Michael Cohen, you'll just go to the live feed and click Political Beatdown. But Political Beatdown starts right now. Karen Friedman Agnifilo, thanks as always for your incredible analysis and coverage. We appreciate you.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.